Yeah, I think I got out of the thing. Give me one sec. Okay, so we did this kind of simple PowerPoint, but it's really just to guide the conversation. So some of the things that we've seen is that when we're talking about investors, there's different things that we should talk about: personality, goals, and if they're owning under a personal name or owning under an entity. And these are items that keep on coming up, so we wanted to touch upon them. So working with investors, the personalities are very different. And even if you're considering yourself an investor, it's important to know what your personality type is so that you can even have your agent know this is the type of person I am, this is what I'm expecting, and it'll help your realtor help you find the right property for you. Also your goals, we're going to go over the different type of goals that investors have. And these goals change. You know, we all have life transitions, so we might want riskier goals at one point, more conservative goals and whatnot. So it's good to know the different type of goals, the different type of investments, so we can kind of start thinking about our future in investing. And then if you should own under your personal name or an entity, because both are good, and it depends in what situation you're in or what you're looking to do. So Christy will be able to definitely talk more about that.
Do you want to start on how? So I think the question that a lot of people have, we'll talk about personalities first, is like, just who am I as an investor? What do I want? What do I want out of it? So we've put together, and Tamara will touch on it more, just what we see in our experience as the types of investors. There's no right or wrong. And really, you don't have to be just one. You could be a combination. But I think really knowing yourself and knowing what you want, even if that goal changes, if those plans change in a year, 2 years, really help you get started.
Yeah, for sure. And I've also seen that, I mean, I know I've changed, but sometimes I'm extremely hands-on when it comes to investment. And I have clients of mine that have been extremely hands-on. And then something happens in their life where they're just hands-off and they just want you to take care of the money. And, you know, they change for that situation. You also may have the worriers, and you might be incredibly worried at times where the money coming from that investment is incredibly important. Like, this is going to pay your bills. And you might be very worried about the whole process, the transaction, et cetera. And then you have the risk takers. So understanding where you are personally or where your client is really important to know how you can work with them. So from what I've seen, the clients that are very, very hands-on and want to be incredibly involved through the whole process, I take a step back, I let them take control of the situation, and I'm there more as a consultant. I'm there giving them advice, but I know that they find pleasure in finding the property, doing the research, doing all that stuff, and they just want to know that we have their back, right? I don't know if you feel or you've seen that also.
I do, and I think even the hands-on people, they want confirmation in that, okay, look, I've done all this research, but am I right? Or am I being steered in the right direction? And again, like you said, I'm happy to take a more hands-off approach in that sense, but I always tell everyone, you have to be comfortable with who you work with. And that's always my goal. I want you to like, know, and trust me. Of course, that's why we're here and we're doing this. But I'm going to fit your needs. So if you want to do all the research and then come to me and kind of get a stamp of approval, I'm happy to do that. It just depends on your needs.
Right. And same with just show me the money type of clients. We have some that they just tell me, I want to be at an 8% return. So if, or let's say 10%, you have $100,000 and you want to make sure that you get about $1,000 a month in money. And that's all you care about. You don't really care where it's at or anything. You just want to make sure you have that return. We have clients that way. And it could be that you're that type of person where you're just satisfied with knowing that you're taken care of and the money's there. So when you're looking at certain properties, knowing that is good because there's a lot more options that are open. Now, if you're very worried and you're very conservative, this might change the type of property you're going to be looking for. You might want something where the return may be a bit less, but you know that it's an area that is clearly coming up in value. And there isn't that much transition with the tenants, we see a lot of first-time home buyers might fit into this investment where they're very worried because they're not only investing, but they're going to be living in that property. So usually with our warrior type of clients, we're very hands-on. We hold them by the hand through the whole entire process, and we're there with patience. You know, we don't mind answering 1,000 questions before and after the whole process.
Right, and I think it's important to know that there is no one type of investing. There's many different types. Like Tamara handles all of the investors who buy properties and then want to rent them out. So she's handling the tenants and dealing with them and anything that goes with that. So if there's plumbing issues or what have you, Tamara is the one that is there for that. But it's important to know that if you don't want to be a landlord, there are other ways. You can fix and flip. You can rent and hold, like we were just talking about. There's wholesaling. There's, like we kind of touched on, if you want to buy a property, you need to live in it for a while, and then in the future you're going to use it as an investment. That's also a different type. So your personality might fit also the different type of investment that you're interested in. And there's a lot that goes into each of them, and I'm happy to discuss it one-on-one if anyone has questions about a specific type of transaction. But just know that there are a lot of ways out there to make money, but it's got to fit your personality and your comfort zone as well.
Mm-hmm. And just to tack on to that, because this is something that comes up quite a bit in my business, and whenever I bring it up, the person tends to be surprised. But we have a lot of people that might be going through a transition where they're about to have a baby, and they want to find a house with the best school district. And this is just, they need to find that. And when I try to have them understand about the investment process and that that child will not be going to that school for another 5 years. It takes about 5 years till they're going to be going to that school district. And a lot of things can happen then. So if we can find a good first home where you can live for about 3 years or so, build some equity in an area that's coming up, in 5 years, you can really level up, how we like to call it, and go into another neighborhood of a larger home where you're now using that money as your down payment, and you're paying less than you did in mortgage than you did in your first property. So that is becoming an investor. It's just changing your mindset when you're buying your home and where I should look at and not just be stuck in, I have to be in the best school district. Because I'm in a very good school district and my kids don't go to the school. They go to another one because I really like this other charter school and they go there. So even if you are in a good school district or not, it doesn't necessarily mean that kids are going to go there. So it's
Right.
just changing that mindset a bit on being an investor.
And I think that kind of segues into how do you buy the property? Do you want to own it? I think it was really on the first slide. Do you want to buy as your individual name or as a corporate entity? And like you were saying, when you're buying a property to live in it, even if you're going to use it for investment purposes in the future, if you could go to the one right
Sorry,
before that.
I'm trying to go back and I can't. Yeah.
And this also ties into your goals. So
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with buying a property that isn't the perfect property, isn't your dream home, but you're going to live in it for now because you know it's a good investment. You're going to build equity, you're going to be saving money, paying a mortgage there as opposed to what you'd be paying in rent. And even for myself personally, you know, I share this with a lot of my clients who are maybe going through this. I find a lot of people for themselves, they want that perfect 3-2 with a 2-car garage and a pool and a great school district, like you were saying. But that's just not reality. Not all the time, and especially not in South Florida. But you can get a great deal, which is what I did when I was 26 and I bought my first house. I wasn't married yet. I couldn't afford much, but what I could afford was not in a great neighborhood at all. It wasn't a 3-2, it was a 2-1. It was outdated. It didn't even have central AC when I bought it, so that was the first thing that we fixed. But I lived there for 2 years, and I was super happy there. And we were able to sell it 2 years later, and we had a ton of equity. So that was able to roll into our next investment, and from there, that's just how you get started. So I tell you that, number one, just to expand on what you were saying, Tamara, is just It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be forever. But also in that case, you would want to own it under your personal name. Why? Several reasons. Number one, your financing options are going to be better if you can buy it under your personal name for your own personal use. So you can go FHA, you put a lot less down. You're going to have less of an interest rate. So that's going to be the benefits there of owning it under your personal name. Plus, you'll have homestead exemption. So your property taxes will be lower. And I would, although I can't give legal advice here, but in my experience, that's what I did. Whereas if you're buying for investment purposes, straight investment purposes, to rent, to flip, excuse me, then you would want to consider a type of entity. Most investors are looking at an LLC. And the reason why is in the name. It's a limited liability company. As an investor, one of your goals should be to limit your liability, because presumably you have assets in your personal name that you want to protect, like your homestead property. Let's say you're buying, additional properties, not one to live in. You want to protect your home. You want to protect whatever else you have, cars, any other assets, cash in the bank. You don't want, if somebody were to slip and fall on an investment property, you don't want them to be able to attach to anything that you own personally. So although I highly recommend, I don't care what stage of investing you're in, whether you're just thinking about it or if it's your 10th, have a good accountant, because not only are they looking out for your interest tax-wise, they're going to make sure that you get the most benefit as well, right? If any deductions that you can claim. So always have a good accountant. And I tell people that right away, because it's really important to build a good team from the beginning. So, and owning under an entity, you're also going to be considering different non-traditional types of financing. So if you want, let's say, to fix and flip, I'm buying a house that needs a lot of work, and my timeline is 6 months, and then I'm going to resell it. Well, you can probably get hard money in that case. You will be paying higher interest, but maybe it'll be interest only. You have to think about your goals. I plan to unload this property in 6 months, 9 months, whatever the case may be, for this margin of profit. Now, of course, not everything goes according to plan all the time, but in that situation, you're going to want to look at, number one, limiting your liability as much as possible, and having non-traditional financing options where traditional ones may not be available in that situation. So definitely look at owning an entity. And what about when you have 10 properties? People have those questions a lot too. Do I have to open 10 LLCs? I think it's a matter of sitting down and looking at the value of what you have versus your liabilities. And maybe you're going to have 2 LLCs. Maybe you have a property that's worth $1 million and 9 properties that are worth $100,000. You don't want to put them all together. You're going to want to split them up. And just but that's more of something you have to strategize when you get there, and really kind of weigh out the risks versus the rewards. And insurance policies as well are always going to be helpful. So those are the little things that I implore that you keep in mind as you start your investing journey. And again, happy to discuss it in detail. We could talk about it all day, but we don't want to do that to you guys either.
No, and I agree with the accountant, and that's something that when we do have clients that are considering being an investor, which I consider all the clients, I try to, again, change their mindset with that, is there's going to be a point where for instance, I'll use a personal example. When I was going through college, I bought my first condo because for me, it was cheaper to pay the mortgage than to pay the rent. And I kept that investment until my accountant said, you can't really declare a loss through it anymore. So it's not that great to have it because now you have to use all this income and whatnot. So the accountant was able to help me strategize when it was going to be the best time for me to sell the condo and when it wasn't. Things that you don't really think about it until you have someone on your court that's there to advise you. And we have some great accountants that we'd be happy to recommend. But when you are going through the process, even if it's your first home, if in your head you say, I might be selling this in 3 to 5 years, just having that conversation with someone, they'll give you the game plan so that you always have it in the back of your head. And the repairs that you do in your property, they're going to be different type of repairs. Everything is going to be different when you know that you're trying to increase the value as an investment, even if it means to rent out the property. You don't necessarily have to sell it. You can now become a landlord yourself. I've been doing this for 18 years. I'll be happy to give you the tips if you need any. If you do need a property manager, of course, I'm here to help. But everyone can become their own landlord, then maybe get equity out of it, buy another property. And the next thing you know, you actually have a lot of properties that you own and you're an investor, and it's a very doable and achievable goal. So that's something that we really want to encourage you to start visualizing yourself in that way.
Tiffany brought up a good question here in the chat. And like we said at the beginning, if anyone has any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll be answering them as we go along. She says her husband and her own their home. They're considering buying another home. Does it make sense to keep their townhome as an investment? And of course, you know the answer to that, Tiff, is it depends. So there's a lot of factors to look at there. Number one, I'm just going to make up numbers. What are you paying in mortgage and association fees in comparison to what you could rent it out for? So if your mortgage and association is, just to make up numbers, $1,000 a month, and you can only rent it out for $1,100 a month, well, at the end of the year, you're not really making very much. And then will you, what type of tenant will you have? Will you be making a lot of repairs? It's hard to say how people treat a home, especially when it's not their home, which to me is mind-boggling. Why wouldn't you want where you live to be in the best shape possible? But sometimes tenants, when they leave, you end up having to put in a lot of work into it, and so you didn't make anything. But then the other side is, in the long run, if I hold on to it, even if I'm not making a lot of money now, is there a good chance that I'm going to grow my equity in that? So that's definitely something to consider. So I don't know when you bought your home, if it was at the top of the market right before the bubble burst. I didn't think so, but just to kind of give an example, or if you bought it at a really good price, that's also something to take into account when considering whether or not your equity is going to continue building. I don't know if Tamara, because she's the one that deals with the tenants, she has any more insight on that.
Yeah, so there's a perfect example. And like Chrissy said, it really depends. But I always think if you're able to afford to keep that home and you're making a little bit out of it, I do recommend having it, because it's in a way a savings account, right? Unless you need that money to pay a down payment for the next property and you're able to keep it, I would keep it. And then you have kind of some rule of thumb. So you look at the environment, and I'll be happy to sit and see the property and kind of give you my personal opinion. But if you see around a townhome, there's a lot of infrastructure going up, there's a lot of new construction, and the county is putting a lot of money in that area, you can assume and you can start believing that that area in general is going to be coming up. So if you can afford to keep the house and have a tenant in there and just wait as the time goes and you build more equity, it might be worth it. So it really depends, where your personal situation is. But I'll be happy to sit with you and let you know this is how much you would rent it for. If you do these upgrades, you would be able to rent it to this amount or whatever it may be. And then you choose what would be the best decision for you.
Then Tiff had a second point, thoughts on the fact that you don't want to drain the equity in home one to put down on home two. I mean, so I think you're saying if you were to take out like a refi, take out a cash out refi to be able to use it towards your new home purchase.
Can I unmute?
Yeah,
go ahead.
So my thought process, or what I wanted to know, is what you guys thought about the fact that obviously that's what a lot of people do. They sell house one and they have enough equity to then put down for house two. What if we don't want to do that and we just, were to decide to pick a loan where maybe there is a PMI for a certain amount of years until we refinance, so that we're not draining all the equity in one to put down on the other?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that something that people do, don't do, advise? Okay, I'm going to mute myself.
No, they do. I've seen that. I don't know, Chrissy. I've definitely seen where people will pull the equity of one house to buy an investment property, either for themselves or to rent out. Again, you would want to talk to your accountant, because your accountant will see how your income is coming and will recommend what would be the best way to do that. But this is definitely something that people do.
Yeah, I think it's called the Burr method.
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard of that? It's like you buy one and then you basically refinance to buy another and refinance. And so it's like loosely what she's talking about. And I think that you just have to be careful because of the way the market is. So, and again, it depends on what your personality type is. If you're a risk taker, I have a client who's a major risk taker. He is buying whatever he can buy, whenever he can buy it. And I've asked him, like, are you worried about the market crashing at any point in time? And I'll never forget, I mean, he's a big joker, and he just said, I don't worry about the market. The market should worry about me. I don't even know what that means. But he'll buy one, and then if he can refi it, cash out any equity and buy another one, that's what he does. And he's not worried about the future per se. But I think that's just something to consider in your personality type. If you pull out equity, are you going to be freaking out about it and thinking that you over leverage that property? And what if the market drops? I mean, the market is cyclical, so it's going to ebb and flow no matter what. So I think it's just knowing yourself, and what you're comfortable with, and then you can really make a game plan accordingly.
Yeah, and I always recommend being conservative. When you do your numbers, do them worst case scenario, always. So if the tenant doesn't pay rent for 3 months, or if the property is vacant, just really have worst case scenario. Are you able to afford that property? If not, then it's a big risk, and you have to, prepare accordingly.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's definitely important to make sure that if you have a non-paying tenant, or you just don't have a tenant, that you can cover the carrying costs and not be sweating it every month.
yeah, I think the next one, we should talk about the type of investments, because there are different type of investments, and it might be something that you may not have considered. So you have the high monthly return type of investments, the high resale return, the live and flip, live and rent, and mixed use. So just to touch through them fairly quickly, and let me know if you have any questions, if you need more details. But the high monthly return, those actually tend to be the riskier investments. So that's maybe buying in an area where the prices are very, very low, but the rents are a bit higher. Usually they tend to be transient tenants. So you might have to be rehabbing the property quite a bit, the dealing with the property being vandalized, that type of thing, but the return could be very high. Another way is if you have a lot of money, you'll be able to get in an area where there's much higher return. But if you're talking about a smaller type of investment at first, between 80 to 120,000, if you want a really high return, you're going to be going into an area that might be riskier, and it's just something that you have to be prepared for. Then the high resale return, that tends to be in areas, in very good areas, but the return tends to be lower. So it really depends. Do you want that monthly income that's going to be helping you pay your bills or start increasing what you make a month? Or are you kind of holding it? You're going to make a little bit each month, but the resale is what you're looking for. In 2 to 3 years, I can foresee this area really coming up. They're building a hospital over here. They're doing all this infrastructure around. I can really guesstimate that this area is going to be coming up. So it's going to have a high resale value. So that's another type of investment. Oftentimes, this is what I recommend for first-time home buyers. Think about this. In 3 to 5 years, this area might be coming up. Yes, you may not be in the best school district, but this area, because of everything around it, gives the impression that it's going to be coming up, so you'll probably have a higher resale value. The live and flip, similar with first-time home buyers or even other people, they live in it, and little by little they fix it. They fix the bathroom, they fix the kitchen, and this and that, and then they'll be able to resell it for higher. With these, I try to remind people to use more not very personalized taste upgrades, right? So we may like a blue countertop and a blue countertop cabinet kitchen. I would recommend try something more neutral, because if you're going to be reselling it, you might be limiting who would want to come and buy that house. Not that blue countertop and blue cabinets aren't good, but it may limit it. So it's just changing that mind frame of what you're going to be doing to the house, because you are thinking about living in it and then selling it. And same with live and rent. The upgrades that you do may not be very high-end upgrades, because like Christy said, oftentimes tenants are not going to treat the house as if it was their own. So it's recommended not spending so much money in upgrading everything. I mean, do it nice, but a different type of upgrade is going to go into it. And mixed use, there are where you have maybe like retail underneath and residential above. You may be buying a condo here and an office condo, actually mixing the type of investment, which is, to me, it's fun. And once, if you're a riskier type of person but still want to be conservative, that's a way to satisfy that itch, is changing up how you purchase and what it is that you purchase so it diversifies it. I don't know if Chrissy, you have anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on when you were mentioning like the high resale return, when you were talking about that. I think also the stage of your life is going to depend a lot on, or the transaction that you do is going to depend a lot on the stage of your life that you're in. If you're nearing retirement, usually you're not as worried about a high resale return. You would rather have that monthly income. So if you have a few rental properties and you're making whatever, a few $100s off of each of them a month, even though, yeah, okay, you have the job of being a landlord and everything that goes with that, unless, you know, of course, I would recommend getting a property management company and using Tamara for that, but you're still going to be a landlord at the end of the day. But I think people who are nearing retirement want that stability and want to know that, hey, if all else fails, I have these rental properties, so I'm making money off the rent. And worst case scenario, they can sell them, but they're not really in it for the high resale return. They're in it more of just the peace of mind, the lower risk. So I think the stage of your life that you're in also just really contributes to what it is that you want to do. Like we were saying, your first-time home buyers, you're perfect for living in and flipping it, or living and then later renting it, because you're just getting started in your life, in your career. And that's going to be a really great way to start your investment portfolio.
Yeah, which I think leads us to the next, the actual process of the whole purchase. I mean, many of us may have gone through it already, but it's good to just touch on it and even thinking of it in an investment way. How do you do it, Christy? Like, what are the basics and all of that?
Right. And I'm just going to kind of give a quick overview because I can bore you all day on the nitty gritties of the transaction because I love it. I mean, it's transactional. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of contracts. And it will bore you to tears, but I really enjoy it. So the main thing is the contract, right? We need a fully executed contract, and that's always going to be the most important because without that, we have nothing. And then your escrow deposit, that means whatever you're holding or whatever you're contributing as a buyer, as your good faith showing, hey, I really do intend, I'm serious about this. I intend to purchase this property. And I, as the title agent, will hold the escrow deposit and we'll send out an escrow letter to show everyone in the transaction, hey, you know, I'm holding $5,000 in the name of Tiffany Ruggiero for the purchase of the property. Yes, Tiff. I'm speaking it into existence because you're buying an investment property soon. And then like the foundation of every transaction is similar, although each transaction ends up being unique. But we have to order your title search, your lien search, your surveys, and your estoppels to make sure. That's how we see what the issues are. Are there any title defects? Are there any liens on the property? So that's my opportunity to investigate and make sure that what you are buying is what you intended to buy. So like I have a client who is a longtime client of mine who is now selling a property, and the lien search came up with about $10,000 worth of liens with the city of Fort Lauderdale. Those are fixable. I always tell people, especially my investors, and this is something you may want to consider as well when you go out and you're starting to look, don't be scared by fines, by code violations, by things like that. We can investigate them. We can see what it is and how to fix it. Number one is compliance. If it's brought into compliance, I promise you, we can work on the actual dollar amount that has to be paid. So I do have my riskier investors who are willing to take on projects, who have liens from the county or the city for unsafe structures or what have you. but they know their experience with those, so they know how to deal with it. And they know that I know how to mitigate it for them so we can lower those liens substantially. And I've done those many times. I actually really enjoy doing it. So that's something to consider as well. I was also on the Unsafe Structures Board of Broward County for a few years, so I know how it works from that perspective of it as well, as far as deciding the cases. And the goal of a city or county is not to stick the homeowner with a huge bill because they didn't cut their grass for a year, whatever the case may be. They want to keep up the aesthetics and the safety of that city or that county. So they want you to bring it into compliance. They want you to fix it. You may have to cover certain costs, but substantially lower than what you might see as a code violation fine or unsafe structures or whatever it is. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we'll clear up any title or lien issues. We coordinate everything with all the parties so that we know that everything is ready to close. If you're buying with a lender, obviously we're working with your lender to get them everything that they need and be able to close timely. For my purposes, I can close in as little as 10 days. But when you're getting financing, especially traditional financing, it will take your lender longer on their end to get everything done just because they have underwriting that they need to go through. There's more pieces of the puzzle on their end that they need to work through. Whereas in the situation like we talked about of hard money is usually a lot less restrictive. Now there's good and bad. Remember, you're going to pay higher interest. You're going to have to put more money down, but you are going to be closing a lot faster. They're not going to be looking so hard at your bank statements, your pay stubs, your credit scores. I mean, it's really more, does this project make sense? And what is the risk to them? So that's really what they're looking at. Closing day is usually anticlimactic in the sense that all the hard part has already been done. You're literally just signing on the dotted line. My job is not done on that day, but at the end of that day, the buyer is getting the keys to their new home and the seller is getting their money. Then we will record everything with the county. And then shortly thereafter, we'll be able to send you your final title policies to the lender and to the buyer. And that's like just the basics, just so that you know. I think also as a new investor, people want to know the lingo so that they know when somebody mentions it to them, oh yeah, I do know what that is. I know what they're talking about. What I like to say as well is ask me. Ask me. Even if I'm not the person that you need to be asking, even if your question should be directed to your lender, I'll tell you. But I'm a source that you can go to and know that I'm going to take the time with you. I'm going to make sure your questions are answered, because whether it's your first property or your 10th or your 100th property, it is a big deal and it should be treated as such. So I want you to partner with people who are going to treat your transaction as a big deal. Just because I do closings every day doesn't mean I think that you should know everything that goes into it. It's not the case. So always feel free to ask. I know Tamara is amazing with that as well. Because
asking questions.
yes,
I'm always asking questions. You know, one thing I say though with Chrissy, she's always available, and even like with the agents on the team, I mean, from the beginning of the transactions, you're on it. You've introduced everyone to everyone. You've contacted the buyer, the seller, the lender. Everyone knows who you are, and you're like in the middle of the transaction from day one, which is awesome. And even for deals that didn't go through, or just clients that are not ready and they just have a question, I mean, you've been so open and resourceful to them that it's amazing. You know, that's what we need, you know?
I'm like a party planner, right?
Yes.
The party is closing day. So I'm the one in the middle getting everything ready. And I wanted to, like, let's have an amazing party.
That's funny. Yeah. So now I want to maybe open it up to see what questions anyone has. You can unmute if you want to. I'm sure there are some questions there, but you know, we'll be happy to open it up to that. No? Well, I did want to repeat it again because before I started recording, I skipped like the beginning part of who we were. I'm Tamara Sabak, and I'm AIO Realty and Property Management. I'm a broker. I'm a property manager. My main specialty is really investors and converting buyers into investors. I love the whole process, and I love helping. Even if, like Tiffany, if you're gonna just want to do it on your own, I'm always open to brainstorming. Like, listen, do this. I wouldn't recommend doing this. I've had bad experience doing that. I've been doing it for so long that I do find joy in seeing people investing in themselves, because if we're all doing good, we're all doing good, you know? So.
Right, exactly. And there's always enough business to go around. So go ahead. If somebody, whoever MacBook is, they have a question. I don't know who MacBook is, but go for it. How about a foreign national investor? We're actually going to do one soon for foreign nationals. Yes, it's different. Are you asking on the buyer side or the seller side, or is there a specific difference on the buyer side? Okay. It's not that different on the buyer side, other than they might be in another country, which is fine. Buyer for now, then seller. So foreign nationals, they're usually cash investors, which is great. We love cash. They are pretty, and Tamara can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're more of the hands-off variety. Yeah. They want to buy, they want to rent and hold it, and they want Tamara to deal with tenants and everything that goes with that. As far as on the title side, the transaction, there's really not much difference other than sometimes we have to, there's a law basically that states that over a certain amount, we may have to have a form filled out essentially that shows that the money is legitimate. And it's really simple. A lot of times the buyers don't even really know. It's just, I have to have it for my records. And it's not everywhere. It's really in South Florida, just because we have money laundering in South Florida. So it's just a way of making sure that things are on the up and up. But otherwise, there's really no difference. When buyers have to sign documents, I'll just talk about this really quick, or sellers, and they're not present in either South Florida where I am, or if they're in another state or another country, that's fine. It does not have to delay the closing at all. There's a couple of different ways documents can be signed. So it can either be electronically, if something does not need to be notarized, great, simple. They can go to the U.S. consulate in the country where they are, if that makes sense. Sometimes the consulate is 8 hours away, so that's not going to make sense. And now we have RON, which is remote online notarization. It's really only available to U.S. citizens, but I have U.S. citizens who are in other countries, and just people who are in other states as well. They can sign really via, not like a video means. I mean, it's very secure and there's a lot of layers of protection there, but basically it's by video. And then for the seller, yes, there is a difference. And the main difference is taxes. If they're buying above a certain, if they're selling a property for above a certain amount, and or the buyer does not intend to live in the property, there is an additional tax that has to be paid. So that's something that I ask at the very beginning. Are you a U.S. citizen, or what is your immigration status? And we have an info sheet that we send out at the beginning, and it literally asks what your immigration status is, because you never know. In South Florida, there's so many, and that's not something that people think to tell a person, because why? I mean, it's just very normal here. But for real estate, I need to know. And if I know at the beginning, we're going to connect you with an accountant if you don't have one, because there's certain IRS forms that have to be filled out and sent, and that's something that it really is accountant specific. It's really important that we use an accountant for that. But the good news is that there's no delay in the closing because of it. It's just an extra step. But as long as I know at the beginning, we'll take care of it by closing date, and it will not be an issue.
Yeah, and just to add to it, and I'll just do it quickly because we are going to be doing a very specific foreign national training. It's going to be next month. We'll send you guys the details if you are interested in it. Everyone in the email here, because this is I'm personally I love doing foreign nationals, and Christy's very good at it because from day one, like I said, she's on it, and we're getting all the ducks in a row and whatnot. But I think the big difference with foreign nationals, usually they tend to want to keep the properties. They're taking the money out of the country. They want to keep it here. So the type of purchases and investment that we do is with that in mind. So when they sell a property, we do what's called a 1031 exchange, where we have the money in a specific account and then we buy another property with that money so that they can avoid paying the capital gain tax. So with foreign nationals, a lot of the investments that I'm looking at to give them a much better profit is having that in mind. I know these areas are going to be coming up, and I know with this money, they just bought 2 homes. We're going to try to get them a building. We're now with this building, we're going to try to get them a commercial building. It's kind of like Monopoly, right? That's the mindset that we have with our foreign nationals. But we are going to be doing a training in that, and it might be good for you to come if you're a realtor or just for yourself, because it's a different concept. And if it is something that you're attracted to, maybe start building your investment portfolio with that mindset could be profitable for you as well. So yeah, great question.
And don't forget, everyone, if you haven't already, just add your email address to the chat so that we can let you know for upcoming events, whether they're Zoom or who knows, even in person one day.
Yeah, so next 2 Wednesdays from, what Wednesday was it? Wednesday the 29th. We're going to be doing another one. This one is going to be, I don't know if Christy, you want to go more into it because she's great at this.
So I get a lot of people who want to know about buying a property that's in foreclosure. Normally they come and they say, hey, I want to buy a property at auction, not realizing that they don't have to wait to auction in order to bid. And an auction is tough, right? You're against other bidders. There's the reserve amount. So that's really, I mean, a better chance that you're not going to get it than that you are. But pre-foreclosures are an amazing opportunity to help a seller who is in need, but also get a great opportunity as an investor. So I always talk to my clients about pre-foreclosures, especially the ones who think that they want auction properties, just because people don't realize that you could be in foreclosure, active foreclosure, and still sell the house and even make money so that you can walk away, start fresh, not have a foreclosure judgment on your record, and the buyer can still get an amazing opportunity. So I think that's probably what we're going to touch on more the next time. So that's one of my favorite types. So I'm excited about that.
No, that's awesome. And when we send the email to everyone with a recap, if you want to send your questions there, like if anyone's shy and they don't feel like asking here, send the questions and we'll be happy to touch on those also in the presentation. So thank you guys so much. You sure no more questions? We'll end this or no? All right, well, stay safe, everyone. I know right now is a very uncertain time, but thank you so much for taking the time, and we're here to help you guys out and make sure we all grow together.
Yes, there's enough business to go around. We're happy to talk to you guys individually off camera if you want to see our faces. And there really is a lot of opportunity, whether it's now based on what we're going through or just in general, especially in Florida. I mean, everybody wants to be here. So feel free to reach out. You have our contact info. I hope you have provided yours, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you very much. It was
Bye.
a wonderful learning experience.
Thank you. Bye.